For today's recipe, we're going to make a cake, and it's going to be a pineapple upside down cake. So you don't see those much these days, but they are absolutely delicious. So to start with, we have to make the glaze that goes in the bottom of the pan to make the pineapple all nice and caramelised. And to do that, in here I've got 1 ounce of the sort of soft margarine spread stuff, and some brown sugar, also 1 ounce. So 1 ounce of brown sugar, 1 ounce of spread, or you could use butter, but if you use butter, make sure it's really soft before you start. And as we make this cake, we're going to talk about some of the techniques that you use to make cakes, because cakes, unlike cooking, which is a bit more of an art form, I think cakes are a bit more of a science, and you have to get things right, otherwise they don't work. They don't rise, they don't come out how you'd like them to. So we'll talk about some of that while we're doing it, and also talk about some of the techniques. And the technique we're going to use for this is what we call creaming, which is when you mix together the butter and the sugar to make a nice light mixture, and that gets the air into the mixture, and that's what helps to make the cake nice and light. So I'm going to make this cake by hand. I would normally maybe use a mixer, but not everybody's got a mixer. So I thought if I show you how to make this by hand, it might make it easy for everyone. Now this bit here, it doesn't have to be totally light and airy and all the rest of it, because this isn't actually part of the cake. This is just the glaze, as I say, that I'm going to spread in the cake tin, so that when we put the pineapples in, they will come out nice and caramelised and golden. So that's probably all I need to do. So there you go, you can see the consistency of that. It's just amalgamated the butter and the sugar. So then I need a cake tin, and I'm using a 7-inch cake tin with a loose bottom, so it's easy to get it out. Now the other thing I should have mentioned is, before you start to make a cake, always light the oven, and in this case it needs to be gas mark 4 or 180 degrees if you've got an electric oven, and make sure that's lit, because you want the oven to be nice and warm when you put the cake in. Okay, so I'm just spreading this mixture into the cake tin, and you can see putting it all round. And the purpose of this, as I say, is to ensure it melts and caramelises and gives a nice glaze on the pineapple. So just put all this in. So there we have the mixture all spread around the tin. Now I've got to put the pineapple in. So just take my chopping board, and I've just taken from a can of pineapple rings. I'm going to arrange these in the tray, because these will be the top when it's turned out. And we'll need to cut the other ones. So I'm just going to cut them. I'm going to arrange them in a nice design. There you go. So this is just a small tin of pineapple rings. There we go. And to decorate in between, I'm going to put some cherries, some glace cherries I've got here. I'm going to cut these in half. 1, 6, 7, 8. Need about, how many of these do we need? I've got 2, 4, about 7 there. So I'm just going to cut them all in half, like this. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because when we arrange them in the tray, we've got to make sure that the rounded side is facing down, because that's going to be the top when we turn the cake out. So there we go. So as you can see, that's the cut side. I'm going to put them so that the cut side is facing upwards. There we go. Pop these in. Oops. And just arrange them around the cake tin. Put some in here as well. Oops. There we go. And when the cake mixture goes in, it will just go in between all the pineapple pieces, and these will just be left there. There you go. So that's the that's how it's going to be before we put the mixture in. So the next stage is to make the sponge that goes on the top of the pineapple, and for that we need 2 ounces of butter or spread, 2 ounces of caster sugar, 2 ounces of self-raising flour, and an egg. And what we do is, in our bowl, we're going to put in the butter and the sugar, and then we're going to do that creaming method again, where basically we're mixing together the flour and the sugar and the butter to make a creamy mixture that's full of air, that's going to help to make the cake rise. And you can see already how that's coming together, and the more you beat it, the lighter in colour it becomes. And you can do this with a wooden spoon, or using a spatula. So can you see how it's changing colour? It's getting much lighter, and it's really light and airy. Now if I was making this with a mixer, I would just throw everything in and mix it all up together. I'm a big fan of that method, all in one method. But when you're doing it by hand, it's really important to do this, because getting air into the mixture will really help the cake to rise. And this is the most important part of the cake making process, is this creaming the butter and the sugar. So I've been mixing for about a couple of minutes, and I think you can see it's really smooth. I can't feel the gritty bits of sugar in there. It's all nicely mixed in, and that took me a couple of minutes of beating. And that's not actually a lot of mixture. If you're doing a bigger cake with more mixture, you might need to do it for longer. You can't do this for too long. You can't do it too much. The more you do it, the lighter your cake's going to be. And I think you can see it's much paler colour than it was at the start. So next thing to add is the egg. So I've cracked into the bowl here, and I just need to whip it, not too much, just to break it up a little bit so that it's not all in yolk, and the yolk and the white are broken up together. And I'm going to add this to the mixture, and it's really important that you do this slowly, a little bit at a time, and mix it in, because if you pour it all in at once, the whole mixture will curdle and split. It might not affect the overall cake, but it could do. So just a tiny amount, and mix that in. And if you find that it does start to curdle, you'll see it curdle if it starts to break up into small, you'll see small pieces. I'm going to try and avoid it with this one, so I hope I won't be able to show you, but if it does, all you need to do is add a bit of the flour, and that will help. So a bit more egg. In fact, I might do that anyway. I'll put a little bit of the flour in, just to help keep it from curdling. There we go. And again, you can really, really whip this up well. Make sure it's got plenty of air in there. So that's how cakes are light, is with lots of air. I'm only putting small amounts in at a time, and just keep whipping. Oops. Okay, and then all of that goes in. And that's the butter, sugar and egg. Now the next thing is to add the flour, And this is where we have to go carefully, because if we keep beating the flour, we're going to knock all the air out that we've put in, because the flour is quite heavy. So I'm going to tip in the flour, and then you have to fold it really carefully, just folding it just enough so that the flour is incorporated into the mixture. Can you see? Just very gently bringing it in from the sides, not actually beating it anymore. Okay, but make sure all the flour is mixed in, and that's called folding. Okay, so there we have our mixture all mixed in. There we go. And that was 2 ounces of each of those ingredients. So as a general rule, for 1 egg, it's 2 ounces of the dry ingredients. So 2 ounces of sugar, 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of flour. Now it's time to pour the batter, the cake batter, as it's called, onto the pineapples. So I'm just going to put that in. And when it's in, I shall spread it around to make sure it fills all the little gaps and covers all the pineapple, and then it can go in the oven. Now another top tip, you notice I had all the ingredients all measured out, ready to go into the cake. That's an important step, because once you've got all the ingredients mixed and the ingredients are all mixed together, it's important to get it into the oven as quickly as possible, because the raising agents in the flour, or if you've added any baking powder or anything like that, do start to work once they get wet. And the longer you leave it sitting around, the less likely it is to rise well. So as you can see, I'm just spreading the mixture gently. Don't want to disturb the fruit underneath. Just spreading it gently around the tin, and then it will be ready to go into the oven. You can see that. So that should fill all the gaps. There we go. Make sure the top's level, otherwise our cake won't rise evenly if it's lopsided. And there's some rules now that we need to be aware of when we put it in the oven. I'm going to put it in the oven in a second, and the rules are: don't open the oven too early, because if you do and the cake has started to rise and it hasn't properly set, it will flop and you'll have a floppy cake. So that's really important. So do resist. If you've got a glass door in your oven, you can watch it. As it gets nearer to the time, obviously we can have a look to check it, and then I'll show you how you can test to see if the cake is actually ready. So I'm going to put this in the oven now. I mentioned it's 180 for an electric oven, maybe a bit lower if it's a fan, 4 for the gas. I've got an Arga, so I'll put it in the baking oven. If there's anybody out there with an Arga, it's baking oven, or if you've got a 2 oven, you need it in the roasting oven with a cold shelf above. And Arga people will know what I'm talking about when I say that. So just bear with me while I put it in the oven, and we'll have a look at it in a few minutes. It'll take about 20 to 25 minutes, but I'm probably going to look at it at about 22 minutes just to be on the safe side. Okay, so we'll see you.
Yeah.
I've got the cake out of the oven, and it's done. It took about 25-26 minutes. So I did check it after 22 and it wasn't quite done. So I'm going to tell you what to look for so you know it is done. And you don't want to go any further than this, or the cake will overbake and be dry and not very nice. So the first thing to see is around the edge. I know this is all the glaze that's coming up through the cake, but around the edge it will start to come away from the sides of the tin, which it is. The second thing, it's got a nice even golden colour all over, and when you press it with your finger, I don't know if you can see that, but it springs back. It doesn't leave a dent, and it was leaving a dent when I did it before. The other thing you can do is, if you've got a cake tester like this, is to put it in somewhere near the middle of the cake, and if it comes out clean, it hasn't got any raw cake mix stuck all over it, and that one does. So the 3 tests are passed and the cake is ready. So I'm just going to leave it to cool in the tin slightly for about five minutes or so, and then I'll turn it out and show you what it looks like. So the first thing we need to do is loosen the edge. So I've got my palette knife. I'm just going to go around the edge to make sure it's not stuck to the sides of the tin. And then I've got a plate here. Now, because this is a pineapple upside down pudding, we're going to turn it out and the bottom will be the top. And nobody knows what this is going to look like, including me. So this is going to be a big surprise for everyone. So very carefully, I'll turn it over, lift off the cake tin, and it hasn't stuck. That's good. Now I've got to get the bottom of the base off. So very carefully, I'm going to just slide my palette knife under here and hope it doesn't wreck the lovely pineapple design. And here we go, there it is. And there we have pineapple upside down cake with all that lovely caramelized glaze that you can see that we spread in the tin. All the cherries have come out the right way, and it's nice and even, and that looks amazing. And you can eat this, you could cut it into slices when it's cooled down and have it as a cake, slice of cake with your tea, or you could even have it as a pudding with custard or cream, whatever you like. So there you have it, pineapple upside down pudding.